Welcome to this edition of Inside the Humidor. We're glad you could join us. We're going to start off this season with a episode on cutting cigars, lighting cigars, some basics about cigar length and width. When someone says what's a 650, you'll know that they're talking about length and diameter of a cigar. So stick with us. Another season of Inside the Humidor coming your way.
Welcome back to Inside the Humidor. It's season 3, and the trifecta has been reunited.
Yes, baby.
To my right, I have Ed Brandyberry. To my left, it's Josh Mills. I'm Josh Eagle, and we are going to start off today's show by cutting and lighting one of these Toranos. Great people at General have sponsored this show, and Torano, this is the new blend and new packaging that Torano has come out. This is the Vault, which I will be smoking. Ed, as
usual, I'm being different. I've got a
outside the box.
Perdomo State Selection.
State Selection, that's one of the newest ones
Yeah.
released at the show this year that we got to see. Again, we'll demonstrate a little bit in the show, some packaging and how the entire industry works and some beautiful artwork that goes into it, as well as explaining that the handmade craft, the different sizes, how to cut, light, smoke the cigar, how to get the best experience out of each one of your cigars, how to keep them. Let's get to it. Josh, give us a little demonstration real quick on lighting and cutting this cigar.
So right now I'm going to fire up the Torano Exodus here, new blend that they retooled. First couple things about the cigar, I don't know if it's be close enough to see there, but there's this horizontal line across the top here. Call that the shoulder or the cap. So right there, as long as you're cutting above that horizontal line that you'll be able to see on your cigar, is going to cut just fine. A couple different cutting techniques. Kind of doesn't address that issue, but the punch here, you just kind of drive the punch into there. That's one way. People like to use those on large ring gauge cigars quite a bit. I'm just going to use a traditional straight cut here. So firmly slice right there. Good to go. Then for lighting cigar, we do what's called toasting the cigar. So if you're on the golf course or want to get it fired up in a hurry, take a couple puffs, put the flame to it, and call it a day. But if you want to give the cigar the best chance to burn perfectly, what you're going to do is you're going to keep the flame horizontal or parallel to the cigar here, and you're never going to actually touch the flame to the cigar, just enough till you see it lighten up. And you want to keep the flame moving, and the goal here is to get it perfectly evenly lit on the end there, without singeing that wrapper on the side. Now that wrapper leaf on the very most outer side there is the most delicate leaf, but the most flavorful leaf. So if you singe that a whole bunch, those first couple draws you're going to get a lot of bitterness, and it's going to affect your smoking experience. So nice and easy, low and slow.
It really does make a difference
Yes.
in flavor when you singe the outer parts of the.
Going to get it toasted here, and then kind of check your progress. You can blow on the end there, and then when there's no more big black spots on there, you know that you're pretty much good to go. Like a time-lapse situation here, maybe.
This might seem slow for the American public, but it really does. That's what cigar smoking's about.
Yeah.
Slowing down.
The whole reason we smoke these things is to decompress, take a minute away, enjoy the flavors, enjoy the experience, enjoy the aromas, and kind of decompress. So taking an extra 45 seconds to light at the beginning to ensure a perfect experience is
It's right.
time well spent.
This is what you get as a result. You get a nice burn. You have a well-constructed cigar. That's what you're going to get. But if you don't do what you did, or there's some other ways that other people use, but the goal is the same, and that is to get an even light on the foot of the cigar, and not to burn up the sides of the cigar. I've seen guys take these flame torches that we have. And you can see burn marks up the side of the wrapper.
Especially on the delicate wrappers like a Connecticut shade.
Right, right.
And and that bitterness really cuts through and affects your
Tamarins
smoke.
will do that real well too.
So we talked about that clean burn on there. One of the things that you're looking for when you're smoking a cigar for the first time, evaluating the cigars, you're looking at a well-constructed, well-put-together, properly lit cigar should burn relatively evenly all the way down. Even if it doesn't burn perfectly evenly, a well-constructed cigar should be able to correct any fluctuations in burn. And then also on Ed's cigar here, you can see how that ash is holding on nice and tight and compact. So that's a sign of a well-constructed cigar as well. If that were to be flaking apart constantly, not something you'd want to see on a cigar at that price point. But it's hard to evaluate that on a cigar that you've poorly lit and not giving it a good chance to burn properly.
That's right.
So Josh has demonstrated the proper technique for getting the cigar started with toasting the foot, with proper cut, not below the shoulder, and this is the only piece of a cigar, guys, that's been added with something other than tobacco. It's actually a pectin, a fruit-based gum they actually use. You take a little bit out, you put this cap on, that little piece needs to be cut and put on here, and then the shoulder is added as well. And what that does is it prevents the rest of this wrapper. Nothing is glued on in this
Right.
Cigar. It's all hand rolled. They use a binder with some rougher type toothier tobacco, it's called. It's a rougher tobacco, so that this nice, smooth, beautiful wrapper tobacco then is wrapped very tightly on it. And the only thing that's keeping it on is this little shoulder at the top. So if you cut below that, it's just going to start to come undone.
Right.
And the smoking experience without the wrapper, it completely changes. It's actually unsmoked. It's pretty gross.
Yeah, it's pretty bad.
Said before
sometimes.
that outer wrapper is the most nutrient dense. It's also the most delicate, and you take the flavor out of that wrapper out of the equation. It totally changes the blend of the cigar. You're not even smoking close to what the blender originally was trying to achieve.
Right.
And we'll talk a bit. We'll get deeper into the wrapper tobacco and how important it is to the cigar a little bit later. But he used what was called a guillotine cut here, which is a straight cut, pretty standard. If you've smoked cigars at all, you've seen one of these. This one just happens to be a monster gauge, a 70 gauge from Monte Cristo and Zycar. That's going to go right over top of the end of the cigar and a nice firm cut.
Right.
But there's other ways to cut a cigar. There's different circumstances that would, maybe present itself that some other tool would be better. Josh,
So I talked briefly about the punch there. Again, the punch is oftentimes really popular with large ring gauge smokers. 60 ring gauge plus, big fat cigars. You'll see guys breaking these out. Then you have some fancier tools. Works on the same concept as a guillotine, but you have the cigar scissors here, which are kind of fun, kind of excessive, but they get the job done. And then you have something a little different, which is called the V-cut. What this does is it actually slices a kind of a wedge out of the cigar, so you get a V cut out of the top of the cigar, just like that. Varying opinions on this in the cigar industry. I know the book says, the Tobacconist University, which we both studied, says that this can be a little intrusive in some cigars and maybe affect the smoking experience outside of what was the blender's intention. But very
I don't know if I'd say it goes that far to interfere that much, but I think that it may slightly undermine the integrity of the cigars, construction-wise, especially if you use that on a smaller gauge.
Well, and I've never seen a blender in the factories in Nicaragua breaking one of these out. So if you want to smoke them the way they tasted them.
I've never seen people in the industry, as far as manufacturer side, ever use a V-cut.
But like so many things in cigar land, it's personal preference. So,
Sure.
If you look into cigars enough and ask enough questions, you'll start getting different answers. So nothing.
Yeah. That's because it's as much art
Yes.
as it is science.
Yeah, and with art comes a lot of opinion.
Right.
Rembrandt.
Besides, and that's kind of a breakdown of the traditional tools there. I've seen people use golf tees on the golf course. That works just fine. When you guys were down in Nicaragua, you didn't have cutters with you. You just used your fingernail to scrape a little X in there and get down into the
Or
binder.
peel the cap.
You could just bite the end off there. Really, as long as you're not below the cap and you're exposing underneath that binder there, you can smoke away. You're exposing the binder tobacco there. So.
The filler stuff.
My wife hopefully never watches this episode, but today I couldn't find a cutter, and I actually went crazy enough to use her kitchen shears. So
Whatever gets the job done.
had to be really careful. But
This little tool right here, you can see on the back where you open it up, this little tool here has this stop, which is called the perfect cutter. And the reason why it's called that, it doesn't actually allow you to go below that cap. But you don't like to think about it. I like to use these a lot.
I do too.
Sometimes on some, they don't work very well on figurados, which we're going to explain here in a little bit. They work better on the Parejo. But sometimes you need 1 or 2 cuts with it. But all in all, it doesn't allow you to go below the shoulder here. It just exposes the filler tobacco by removing the cap. So,
which is all we need to do.
Mm-hmm. The cool thing about your cigar scissors too, they come with other little tools to mess with your butane lighter. So if anyone's ever had a butane lighter out there that give you fits, this gives you all the tools that you'll need for bleeding, for adjusting. So those are kind of neat too. So you have additional tools on the scissors, so everything you'll kind of need to light and cut your cigar, because those are the most important things. Because if you can't do either of those 2 things, you just have a brown ball of tobacco laying on the ground. So what we're going to jump into next is going to be the difference between that Parejo and Figurado that I just talked about. I'm going to allow Ed to go through some of the standard sizes and what a Parejo is.
Okay, a Parejo, it comes from the word Spanish that we would translate to parallel. And so what you usually are talking about is this rounder traditional look on the cigar where the sides have parallel side on around it, okay, against it on the other side. There's been some talk about whether a box press is really a figurado or shaped cigar, but they're really understood to be Parejos also, because the entire body of the cigar is parallel to another side of the cigar, okay. And we have sizes, variety of sizes here. We have we could start with a Corona, which is a narrower gauge, more traditional Cuban size. This particular one is Stack Lancaster Corona, which is a 5-inch 42 gauge cigar. Maybe Josh will talk about gauge here in a little bit. This is a cigar that's a Toro. It's been box pressed. And this is another Toro. You'll notice the differences on these. They're the same length, pretty close to the same gauge. What happens is this particular cigar, the mold is shorter than the cigar. And so what happens is it gets pressed down flat like this when they put them in molds. Molds, a lot of people don't realize how much of this is done by hand, and then they hear, oh, mold. And it's not like you can pour a cigar into a mold.
Right.
Yeah, you know, it's made by hand. You lay it in there, and then they fill that. That's filled. It's a tray, and then they put another one on it, and you stack them, and the whole time you're keeping pressure. Almost all the places, not all of them, but almost all the places use an old-fashioned press with a wheel that you just turn at the top, and they keep that pressure on until really they've got the stack filled up.
Right.
And then when they're ready to go do another one, they don't take that stack away until then. And what'd they say that it's usually only 20 minutes to...
It's 20 minutes on something like this,
Yeah.
but up to overnight on the box press or longer, right?
True.
When they do the box press, to have it maintain that box shape without springing back
Right.
to a round, they actually have to stay longer.
Yeah, I like to describe cigar tobacco as living leaves that are dead. And one of my grandkids says, it's like a zombie.
Right.
Yeah,
Keeps coming back.
They keep coming back. And if you properly take care of a cigar, they will last theoretically indefinitely. But this has become more popular in the last decade. And that is a 60 gauge cigar. This, once again, is a Stack Lancaster Gordo. And Stack Lancaster Gordo is another one of our cigars.
Yeah, we're going to be able to delve into that here in the future. I don't think we had a chance to talk about that last season, so
right.
it's going to be great.
That's right.
What sizes you have?
I also have a Lancero, which is You know, you have lots of arguments about these cigars, but there are a lot of people, who, especially who I like to describe as cigar geeks, that really get into the Lanceros and the Coronas. It is an enjoyable cigar.
Yeah,
It doesn't have any more tobacco in it than a Robusto,
right,
as far as overall
like this
tobacco content. Yeah, yeah. Or this is a Corona, yeah. Yeah. This is a Robusto. Now these Toros are actually the top selling sizes in the industry. The most common, it's a 6-inch cigar, and it's usually between 50 to 54 gauge.
Pretty much been the
Yeah,
traditional.
yeah, it has.
Traditionally 50, but the industry's gone to
Oh, a lot bigger.
bigger gauges, like
Right,
you were explaining
right.
in the last decade.
I have some Churchills here too, but this is, once again, these are larger gauge Churchills. This is, of course, a Perdomo, double-aged vintage 12-year Maduro, and that is a Churchill that I believe is a 54 gauge. Might be 56, but gauge.
Churchill's usually about 7.5
Right,
inches.
7.5,
Nobody
7.
really does that traditional 48 anymore,
No.
which I think is
Very,
a
well,
fantastic
they're done,
size.
but there aren't a lot of them.
No.
No.
No, a lot of them do a 50, 50,
I'm always excited
52.
when I see a
Yeah,
48
yeah.
Churchill.
So those traditional sizes, I mean, you're going to go with the Corona, the Robusto, the Toro, the Churchill, and then you'll have what we're going to get into next is some of the Figurado
Right,
sizes.
right.
Lanceros are traditional, Lonsdale, Panatella, all these sizes and all these names in today's industry, they're so overly used, I think, and they've come up with things like Torbusto and Super Gordo and Super Toro
Yeah.
and Double Robusto.
Well, the confusing thing is for the customer, and I've got to sympathize with them on that. When you come up with other names to call a cigar as a manufacturer, you leave confusion in the mind of a customer, so that when they're shopping and you've decided to call this one instead super shorty or skinny boy
Yeah,
or
that's
something like
short
that.
Churchill.
Yeah,
Petite
or
Churchill.
petite short Churchill. Yeah,
Double wide
I'm-
short Churchill.
Yeah.
it's a Corona,
Yeah.
and there's an industry name for it. And I think you take risks as a manufacturer when you give them these different names.
And I think with all marketing, I think you found a lot of marketing in this business, especially over the last 2 decades. We're always had the traditional looks to it, but marketing has taken off to a new standpoint. If we take a look at the cigar I'm smoking here, I wouldn't consider this a classic look to a cigar.
No, not quite.
A fuchsia band with
Embossed silver.
embossed
letters.
silver lettering. I don't think that was happening 20 years ago. So the artwork has changed, but some of it has still stayed the same. The technology goes up. So
We've tried to
with
stay
printing.
fairly classic
yes.
with our Stack
Boulevard
Lancaster.
inspired design there.
So-
Yeah, and
Right.
you can see the artwork. If you go to your local tobacconist and just check out the Humidor, just walk around and look at all the different designs, how much went into it, all of the very small attention to detail, the filigree, the gold. So we have the straight barrel, the Parejo, and some of the traditional sizes. I want to explain to you what a Figurado is, and I'll let Josh handle that. He's got some sizes over here that usually you're going to find one of the Figurados in each one of the lineup blends. So if you like a Figurado, you're going to be able to find maybe 1 or 2 in the blend that you like. They usually don't go beyond 2 in each one of the sizes.
Unless they're like the Hemingway, which
Anyway,
is
it's
all Figurados.
All Figurado. There's some lineups that are just all those, and I'll let Josh explain that.
So really, the key difference between a Figurado and a Parejo is a Figurado is that parallel sides, and a Parejo is a parallel sides. Figurado is anything that has anything besides that. So here's an excellent example. They call this a number 2. Number 2 is one that Monte Cristo and other such brands use. It's kind of like traditionally translates to a torpedo, but this is kind of a liberally interpreted torpedo here. So it does come to that kind of traditional torpedo shape, but as you can see, it kind of flares and bells out as it goes down. I think it's almost more like a pyramid. This is a size they've been toying around with. They've called it Torbusto before. So kind of comes down to a soft box press pyramid end down here with a traditional torpedo top there. But moral of the story is it's a figurado because it doesn't have those perfectly straight sides there. So that's kind of the key distinction. Some other ones, you guys mentioned the Hemingway line. This is from the Fuentes. It's called a Perfecto. Comes up to Perfecto. I've seen come to either a torpedo, bellicoso, or regular standard cap on the top here. But it's really that Perfecto end that makes it. It kind of comes down to that closed foot at the bottom, and then might kind of flare and bell throughout the cigar. But I think the closed foot is kind of what makes a Perfecto iconic. And there's some other kind of fun examples. This is a local Pittsburgh guy, did the Island Gem. He also calls this a number 2, kind of tongue-in-cheek, I think, because it's sort of a torpedo, but he had his rollers kind of get creative and make it look like a number 2 pencil. He's got the darker leaf fold up here on top to make it look like a pencil tip, the lighter shaggy fold on the bottom here to make it look like an eraser. So this one kind of showcases some of the creativity and artistry you can do. And another thing about figurados, they usually stick the more experienced rollers in the factories on these because they're widely regarded to be more difficult. And when you get into something kind of wonky like this one, not easily done, I don't think. I think they probably had to have some pretty fine rollers in there to achieve this effect. More traditional, just a standard torpedo here. You can see pretty much straight, probably looks almost exactly the same as a Toro if I cover it up like this, but as soon as you reveal that torpedo top there, that's what makes it a torpedo. So that's the key distinction there. We did talk a little bit about gauge throughout, so for anybody who may not be familiar, ring gauge is a unit of measure, measures 64ths of an inch. So a 5 by 60 would be a 5-inch cigar by 60 ring gauge, just shy of an inch in diameter there. We actually have some cigars that what brand of cigar called the inch. They make 64 ring gauge, so it's exactly 1 inch in diameter there. Pretty much anything over 60 is big ring gauge, I think we would probably all agree. And you get into some like hyper large sizes. Josh has some wonky ones here.
Yeah, there's some comically large stuff. Like this particular one is the Sanctum Double Gordo, and I think they stick with the 60 ring gauge, but they went to 8 inches long. So you have something, it's comically large. It actually smokes pretty well.
Yeah.
You can smoke the whole thing down. It's got a good price point. That's what they're kind of going for. Something funny there. The Asylum is known for some crazy ring sizes. This is actually a 680. So this is actually larger than an inch around.
Right,
so
inch
the
and a
80
quarter.
64ths of an inch. And the 64, guys, is still the great mystery of the cigar world. There doesn't seem to be the solid answer where 64ths came from. Is there?
I don't think the cigar industry made that up. I think ring gauge is its own.
Ring gauge is its own thing, so it's
Yeah.
like a ring sizing chart. Just go with it.
Maybe.
So
Something
the old
like
inch
that,
around finger. This particular one, you have this comically large cigar. That's the lockjaw cigar. But then there's some other interesting things that they do with the wrappers. You saw that on the number 2 from Island Gem. This is your traditional barber pole. You're using 2 different wrappers, kind of making it look neat. You spin it around, it has that barber pole effect on it. Changes up the smoking experience slightly, and it also changes the appearance to catch the eye. This is a Candela.
It's a great cigar.
Before the 1970s, this Candela was the wrapper you see here. This green wrapper was the way pretty much cigars were made. It was the most popular before they put a lot of aging on the cigar to go ahead and get those darker colors. But this is a Candela, a nice traditional cigar. This one happens to be the GB19 from Nomad. Brand new cigar commemorating the Packers' first year. If anybody cares about the Packers.
There's a few of us.
So so to recap a little bit, guys, we have Parejo, we have some of the traditional sizes, which you recognize as a cigar. We have the Figurado that changes up, no longer parallel size, changes the smoking experience slightly, depending on what you have there. On the Perfecto with the closed foot, you get a smaller draw, and then it opens up. So that was what the reason and how the blend goes on the Perfecto. The Torpedo, you can control the amount of smoke you're getting from the filler by controlling how deep you make that cut.
Right.
So you can have a different experience with that. The Torbusto, it has a couple dynamics of it. It's coming back out almost like a Solomon. We're going to have multiple points in the cigar. We're going to be getting more smoke from the filler. So that's kind of what the Figurados do, where the Parejo is meant to just, it's powered through. They want it to be consistent. They want the flavors to do what they're going to do within the tobacco, and they don't alter it with the shape of the cigar.
Right.
Then we get into the shapes of the cigar by diameter versus you know, you got this diameter versus this diameter. Guys, what do you think? What's your opinion? What's going to change on these things when we talk about the components of the cigar? And first, to give you a quick overview on what the components are, we talked about the outside. You know, you have the head, cap, the shoulder that you don't want to cut below. This is the body of the cigar, and then the foot is what we light.
Right.
There is no knees and toes, or we'd have a whole song.
Yeah.
But the difference in the diameters inside of this tobacco, we have the wrappers on the outside, right? The binder was, we talked about a little bit earlier, a different cut, a different priming, a different type of tobacco. It's going to hold this wrapper on secure. Then inside is the filler tobaccos, the bunch, a lot of different names for what's inside of it, but it's basically multiple tobaccos that are inside, and the binder and the wrapper are just barely on the outside here. Some cigars will have a double binder,
But even then, it's still, you know,
still just
a fraction.
one fraction of what the cigar is.
Mm-hmm.
We've heard some crazy stuff in the industry. There are a lot of opinions out there. We've gotten, you know, further along in the
over
process
the place.
by creating our own cigar called Stack Lancaster, made in the A.J. Fernandez factory. We got to be pretty hands-on inside of the factory and see what goes on. Ed, what do you think? What's your opinion that the wrapper, for the thing we put on our lips, this beautiful leaf on the outside, are usually A grade? What do you think that gives you in the percentage-wise of your smoking experience?
Well, with ours, I think that there is a more dramatic difference in the flavors between our Corona and our Toro and Gordo.
Right.
And the Robusto sort of medium in between that. But I think that, of course, you're going to taste more wrapper naturally with this, and yet this particular blend, most of our customers' response has been this is the spicier one. And that would
indicate more filler.
would indicate more filler, which is just the opposite of what everyone talks about in the Corona. So I think it's an interesting blend in itself, just because of some of those things. But normally what you would have is you would have a preponderance of wrapper in comparison to the percentage, no matter what you're talking about. The wrapper is going to have the biggest impact, biggest effect on your overall taste, enjoyment of the cigar,
Yes.
regardless of what percentage you give it. Even if you're as conservative as say it's only 25% of your flavor, you're talking about one leaf versus 7 total, and that one leaf has 25% impact on the overall impact and flavor of the cigar. And it's the thinnest leaf.
Yes, and usually it's very delicate. You can almost see through some of those good wrappers.
Yeah.
So, who is calling you?
You want that? I just hit the button before to decline with a message.
Let me see. Is it my wife?
No, it's Joe
2 minutes?
Bullock.
Okay, hit the back button on the back of the silencer.
The one before was Banco.
We got 2 minutes.
Damn popular, man.
So 2 minutes, and what were we just talking about the filler?
Filler, yeah.
So, what would you would put on? I think it depends on cigar to cigar, actually. on
Yeah,
what-
it's the blender.
Yeah, the blender is gonna matter. We've heard crazy like 80%.
Yeah, I've heard as low as 15% of the flavor of cigar comes from the wrapper, all the way on up to 80%.
All 15% is doing is taking almost a percentage of
Of what
how
the-
much of the leaf
Yeah.
is there in the cigar, and so okay,
Well,
15%.
as I think of different examples, you know, if you smoke the Perdomo 20th anniversary in a natural, and then you smoke it in a Maduro, there's definitely some differences. But
Oh,
I don't
yeah.
think I'd say much more than 50% of the flavor changes, as
No.
opposed to something like the Oliva Milanio. You smoke it with that Sumatra natural wrapper on it, and then you smoke it again with the Mexican San Andreo Maduro, and you're, I'd venture to say 70% of it. I mean, it's like a totally different cigar.
Yeah,
So
it is. It is
there's-
dramatic.
You know, it'll vary depending on what kind of tobaccos you're working with, what kind of wrappers you're working with, and who the blender was, and
Yeah, so basically what you're looking for when you're out there trying to make a purchase.
And how much Ligero's used in the blend.
Yeah, because there's we'll get into that in depth in some later episodes when we talk about the actual physical plant and the parts of the plant, what gets you more nicotine, what gets you flavor, what gets you, wrappers, where they come from. So when you're out shopping and you're looking around, basically what you want to do is you want to keep track of what you're smoking. I think that's one of the main keys. Save your bands. You can bring it to your tobacconist. They can go ahead and take a look. So if you found something you like, be a Parejo or Figurado, and a brand you like, in Maduro or Natural, and we'll talk about Maduro in future, and Corojo versus Sumatra. But what you're looking for is you want to find a cigar that you like, and your tobacconist should be able to put you into something else similar if you want to try something different. And that's going to be based on the regions, the countries that these things come from, the wrapper that's on it, the manufacturer. There's a lot of things that are going to go into what is being done to get that overall experience in a cigar. So I'd like to thank the guys from General Cigars for being so gracious to let us buy. FDA regulations out there, kids. Let us buy these cigars to go ahead and sample out today. Because
smoke, yeah.
this is a nice one. I have the
I look forward to trying.
San Andrean Mexican wrapper on this one, so we might get back to that because I might have a propensity to smoke a couple of those.
Might.
Any final thoughts, guys?
No, I think we got to get back into it, do another 202 episode or something like that.
Yeah.
'Cause we're only scratching the surface there. So
There's a lot to be. The craft is beautiful. It is artisan. It's all handmade. You guys are going to want to get out there and try some of these cigars. So, for Ed Brandyberry, Josh Eagle. Oh, shit.
try that one again.
For Ed Brandyberry and Josh Mills, I'm Josh Eagle. Thank you for watching Inside the Humidor. Get out there and burn one.
Thanks for watching an episode of Inside the Humidor. For Josh Mills, Ed Brandyberry, and Josh Eagle. If you have any further questions, feel free to shoot us a message on YouTube, or you can email me personally at thesmokemastergeneral@gmail.com. We do have an online retail site, stackcigars.com, and we are based out of the smokestack of Moon Township, right outside Pittsburgh by the airport. So if you're ever in the area, stop by and say hi. Thanks, guys.